lot of abilities like a toddler, honestly.
Wow. Okay. All right, it's going to be one of those episodes.
Yeah, I mean,
coming in hot.
is.
Coming in hot.
Hey, Chad.
Hey, Megan.
How's it going?
How's it going? Good. How's it going with you?
Good. I got a lot more sleep last night than I did the night before, so that was good.
Because you were too busy.
I was too excited about my game.
Yeah.
Too excited about living into the excitement of my game.
That is true.
And eventually I'll stop talking about it. Maybe this will be the last week I talk about it. But,
you hang on to it as long as you can.
I mean, people are going to be listening to this much later into the year, and they're going to say, Megan, your game's been over for months. Get over it. But, here I am.
Huck, we've enrolled him in soccer.
Oh, my gosh.
I know. We just found out his first game his first practice is next Friday.
Uh-huh.
And his first game is next Saturday.
Oh, wow.
So the first time he sets foot on the field will be the day before he actually plays the game. We'll see. We'll see how that goes.
That will be hilarious.
Yeah.
I remember when my brothers first started playing t-ball. It was so funny to watch. They could never hit the ball. They were running the wrong direction. It is the best.
Yeah.
It's the best.
I have the athletic capabilities of a toddler. Anyway,
not, yes. We have a guest today.
We do have a guest.
I can't believe it. We have the world-renowned centering prayer guru of the University United Methodist Church here today. Did you know, Chad?
She's big league.
She is. She is very good at sitting in silence.
And a recent, new grandmother.
I know. It's very
exciting.
Absolutely.
Who's going to say her name? Am I going to say it or are you going to say it?
You should say it.
Because you usually say it, don't you?
I don't know if that's true.
It's Jan Reed.
Whoa! That's
Welcome,
very
Jan.
exciting. Jan,
Thank
we're so
you.
excited
I'm very
have
happy
you.
to be
Always
here.
good to see you.
Jan, how did you get started with centering prayer and meditation and this work that you've been doing for such a long time?
Well, basically, I was kind of having a breakdown, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'd had a lot of life crises.
Yeah.
I lost my mom early, and different things were happening, and just because of my own personal makeup, it was overwhelming, and I was starting to have panic attacks on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And I was going to a therapist, and he said, meditation is really good. You might try some type of meditation.
Yeah.
And so I was in a store, I was having half-price books, and I picked up a book on different types of meditation. One of the chapters was centering prayer.
Okay.
And then I had a girlfriend who was already doing centering prayer.
Yeah.
So she said, there's a workshop coming up this Saturday. Why don't you check it out? And so I went to the workshop, and that Saturday changed my life.
Yeah.
It was major. So I said, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
This is going to be part of the new me.
Yeah.
And then as I got going, they recommend that you participate with a group.
Yeah.
And at that time in Austin, there were like maybe 7 groups associated with churches. And I started going to All Saints Episcopal right down the street from us. And I started going with that group. And I told Betsy, the leader there, I said, I want this at my church. And so she agreed, and we did a session it was a joint session. We invited her church members and our church members, and a bunch of people from our church came.
Yeah.
And then that kind of triggered, one of the Sunday school classes here was kind of disintegrating, I guess you would say. And so some of the people from that class had been to that centering prayer workshop, and they said, would you like to take over our Sunday school slot and kind of segue into a centering prayer group? So that's what happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think I've probably told you this, but I first had an introduction to centering prayer when I was in seminary, and my world religions professor, Ruben Habito, told us we were going to start doing that every week in class. And so I had this class twice a week, and I think it's the first 10 minutes of class, every class we did it. And I swear to you, that entire semester, every other day that I had this class, I would have a tickle in my throat and would be in a coughing fit in the middle of this. Every single class. It was just like clockwork. Every week this would happen to me. And so I never I never got into the groove of it, and it was bothering me because I knew it would be good for me, but I never did it. And then I took a second class with him, I think probably a year later, and we did the same thing. We started every class with it, and that was when I really started to be able to engage with it. And I tell people this all the time, especially my students. It takes practice to be able to sit quietly. It takes practice to be able to close your mind off. It takes practice to be able to do those things. And I think so often we feel like, well, I should just be good at this. I can sit and be quiet. And the truth is it takes a lot of practice
It does
to do
take
that.
practice.
And it takes practice to remind yourself how to clear your mind. I like to think of like the clouds going by, or the windshield wipers, or the bowling lane. Those are all things that have helped me. But I think it's really important to remind people that you have to practice at this to be able to feel comfortable at it.
That's what I was thinking when Chad mentioned his son starting soccer.
Yeah.
When we were in vacation church camp, I've done centering prayer for many years,
Yes.
8, 9, 10 years.
A long time.
And of course, we do the children's version. We don't, normally you do 20 minutes in a sit, and we do like 1 minute. With the 4-year-olds, we do 30 seconds. But I tell them the same thing. I said, the first time you jumped in a swimming pool, could you swim?
Yeah.
The first time you went to soccer and you didn't even know what the game was about and how to do it, could you do it? And they say no. And I said, it's a practice.
It is.
It does take some practice.
It is. Yeah.
Did you say bowling lane?
Yeah. So so there's this idea that for me, it's a way of clearing my mind, clearing the slate of my mind. So I think about it as like lying in the grass and seeing clouds go by, and all these thoughts I'm having are like the clouds, and they go by. Or the windshield wipers, I can kind of wipe through whatever it is that comes across my screen, my mind. And the bowling lane is a little bit different, but it's like rolling the bowling ball and like clearing the lane. I'm clearing the lane of all, and the pins are all of my thoughts. Like, I need to get to this grocery store. I gotta write this email. I gotta call this person back. All these things.
Do you always get a strike in your mind? Or
obviously, I always get a strike in my mind.
This is we
do not get splits. We're clearing things out of the way. It's a strike every single time. I can't believe you'd ask me that. That's ridiculous. But I do think, Jan, it's really helpful for people, and I think we live, and I find myself all the time distracting myself with my phone, with my TV, with whatever it is, and finding time to do that, but also helping other people to practice that is so important. To be able to just be able to sit with our own thoughts, which is a scary thing in the middle of it.
It really became an anchor during the pandemic.
Absolutely.
We went to Zoom, and I think we had like 20 some odd. Normally our centering prayer group fluctuates between 8 and 12 or 15 at the most. And we had, 25 to 30 people showing up. Now, some of them were out of town that were friends.
Yeah.
But it was a good way to process all the, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when it was just something we had never been through before. And it was, flaring up a lot of emotions, all different kinds.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we go back to the beginning,
yes,
I wanted to talk about babies and grandmother and the important, because I know that's a thing that just happened for you.
Yeah.
Are you just over the moon, I imagine?
I am, and I promised I wouldn't talk just about the baby.
We'll ask you other questions. Don't worry.
Is that crazy or what?
No.
So my daughter's due date was the day before the ice storm.
Yes.
And so we were kind of sweating that out.
Yeah.
And she didn't have the baby. We got past the ice storm. And then it was a week later, they needed to induce labor.
Yeah.
So we went into the hospital, and it all went pretty well.
Good.
Her plan was to go to a birthing center.
Okay.
She went to the birthing center, and they noticed the amnio fluid in the placenta was low.
Okay.
So they said, we can't do the birthing center.
Yeah.
So they sent her to St. David's over here.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic.
Great.
And she did, she tried not to do any kind of pain intervention.
Yep.
And she got through a lot of it, but then she got to the point where she just started running out of steam.
Yep.
And she still wasn't dilated enough, and she knew, So then she decided to get an epidural,
Yeah.
Yep.
and life was happy
That's a
again.
game changer, that epidural, right? I mean, obviously, I don't know, but like
Yeah.
watching it with Ashley both, there was no question going into it. She was like, "Yeah, I'm getting the epidural." And it, I feel like you have births how they're portrayed in movies,
Yeah.
and so there's always kind of,
Yeah.
almost comically over
Yeah.
the top. Is
Yeah.
how
A
it's
lot of
always
screaming.
portrayed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like that's the only frame of reference I
Mhm.
had, and then going in that epidural, I think was ain't no thing really.
Yeah.
I mean, the epidural itself was
Yeah.
pretty intense.
Oh,
but-
my daughter was a rock
Of
star.
Yeah.
course
She
was.
did not even whimper,
Really,
even before the epidural. I mean, she'd go
yeah,
and kind of,
Yeah.
squinch, and then I'd say, sink into that sensation, and
Yeah.
I didn't want her to start talking about how much it hurt in her head,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
to be present. And her husband was rubbing her lower back when that was going on, and so we had this little team thing going on every
Good.
time a contraction came up.
That's good.
But
Ashley got it the first one that way. The second one he came in, and the guy was training another guy.
No.
And it's like they're standing behind her, and like I'm in front
Holding
of her,
her,
and
yep.
she's bent
Yep.
over, and I'm kind of
Yep.
rubbing her arms, and he's like, the guy behind her's going, "Now you see these vertebrae right there? and
No.
there?
No.
You're gonna want to get it in here, not
No.
too far." And he's like, "Real," and she's like, and they stuck it in, and didn't get it, so they had to pull it out, like.
yikes!
And so
Oh my gosh.
she that I felt for her there. That was
Yeah.
pretty awful. And at some
Yeah.
point, you're like, really?
Yeah.
There's got to be a better way than this.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
but
Well, that is exciting. What is the child's name?
His name is David Ray Zazumbo,
Wonderful.
and he was born 7 pounds 3 ounces the day before my birthday.
Of course he
Nice.
was.
So I was really happy. I figured we have a lot of
Birthday buddies?
birthday celebrations in the
Yes, a
future to do
lot.
together.
A lot.
And he's perfect in every way. What can I say?
Of course he
He's
is.
beautiful.
and mom and everybody are healthy.
Everybody's doing great.
Good.
Yesterday I think he got a little overstimulated and went on a crying jag, but
Well,
most
yes.
of the time he's on a pretty even keel.
Good.
He doesn't fuss very much, and
Yeah.
he's getting the breastfeeding thing down, and Lily's getting the breastfeeding thing down,
I
and
think I heard you say she's getting 6 hours of sleep at night.
yeah,
That's pretty
in
good.
24 hours.
Yeah.
In 24,
Oh,
not a night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in a 24-hour period.
Yeah,
So
I was like,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's pretty, yeah.
yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
they're doing good.
Yes. Yes. Jan, tell us how you ended up at our church here.
Well, I
Oh,
want to know
sorry.
before.
Oh, what happened before?
I want to know where she's born and all.
Oh,
that.
yeah, yeah, your 2-minute story. Oh, I'm sorry. I got distracted. We
No.
talked about babies and breathing, and I forgot what we were talking about. Jan, can you give us your life story in 2 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
I was born here in Austin, Texas.
No
I
way.
know.
Local.
I was born at the old Seton Hospital that used to be just back over here off of 24th and Guadalupe, back in that neighborhood.
I didn't know that.
It was an old red brick building. And I think Lucy Baines Johnson was born when I was born, but I'm not sure. I think that's what Mother said. And so I spent a few years here. I think we lived here for about 3 or 4 years, and then we moved to San Antonio, and we spent about 3 or 4 years there, and then we moved to Houston, and that's where I graduated from high school.
Okay.
And I grew up in the Methodist Church.
Yes.
My mom and dad got married in the Methodist Church in Dallas. I was baptized in that same Methodist church in Dallas. My first husband and I got married in that Methodist church.
Which church was it in Dallas?
It was Lakewood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my grandparents were on the founding committee for that church when they were just meeting in a temporary. It was one of the army barracks. It was an army barrack that they had gotten on the property before they started building the actual church. So we have a long ancestry in that church. And then I grew up in Houston and going to the church there and going to MYF and everything. But then I went to college and I got away from that, and I was a non-church person. And then when we moved here, we adopted my daughter Lily. She was born in Taiwan. And we kind of had a conversation about religion, And Jim also kind of grew up in the Methodist church, and I said, I just can't imagine not a child not having some kind of concept about God, and in my case, Jesus. And I said, let's just have her, get involved. And then my mom died when she was 5 years old, and that was a gut punch.
How old were you when your mom died?
I was 43.
Okay.
And I'm older than my mom was when she died. She was 67 or something.
So
It was unexpected.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I started going to the church. And that was I came to this church, and it was my anchor. And I just come by myself to the early service. Chuck Merrill was the pastor. And, he would always say, if you're looking for your spiritual home, if you're looking for some place to hang your spiritual hat, he would say stuff like that. And it just felt like I had come home.
Yeah.
And also what I liked about it is that Chuck would talk about applying the gospel to real life situations and how we deal with what's going on in our world, led by what Jesus has taught us. So I really like that, because a lot of churches don't do that. They skirt around that. And so that's what happened. And then Lily started going to Sunday school here, and it went from there.
Did you, were your parents, did you grow up in a politically minded home? One of the things we've talked about a lot on the podcast is kind of how people end up here. And sometimes it's that they grew up in a very conservative home, and this is kind of what was more comfortable for them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they grew up in a very political home, and this is kind of where they naturally ended up. I just wondered what that was like for you.
My parents typically voted Republican.
Okay.
They weren't uber conservative, but I guess I'm the black sheep in the family, because
aren't we all?
Because my brother usually votes Republican, and I do not. And that happened pretty early on. Like when I was in high school, I started thinking, But the church I went to in Houston was, I don't remember it being super conservative. I think it was a moderate church. And, there was nothing in there that smacked of fundamentalism or anything like that, anything that, So, but, I kept kind of moving towards the left, and my parents stayed towards the right. And my mom used to jokingly call me a commie pinko,
Wow. Jokingly.
Yeah, jokingly. But anyway, so that's why I felt so comfortable, I think, partly when I came to this church, because I would go to Lakewood in Dallas, and they're pretty moderate, and but there would be things happening in the world, and I'd go, why aren't they addressing some of this?
I feel like that's a lot of churches, and like growing up, I mean, Church of Christ is super conservative, but like really, Sunday to Sunday, it's just people that they're just more than being political, like they're just not saying anything. They're not addressing it. They're very caring about, how's, Jan doing? She's a new grandmother. Maybe we can, take her a meal or something like that. It's very much, that's just their frame of reference. It's very small in that world, and the world needs folks like that for sure. But it's sometimes the silence is where I feel like you notice it. It's like, why aren't we talking about this thing?
And
like you said, Jan, applying what Jesus has said about what we do, how we react to the real world. I think that's something that a lot of people are in search of as well.
I took that discipleship Bible study class. I took 2 of them that each one lasts for a whole year. You really get to know the people in your group.
Yeah, you do.
Because you're there for 2 hours, I think.
2 or 2.5 hours,
you had a little workbook, and you would read. We did the first one's like a survey of the whole Bible, and you would, do something. And they had questions at the end, and they asked about your personal life and how this tied in with whatever the lesson was. And you got to know everybody really well, because you're sharing personal things about each other. But that's what I liked about that class is because they said, they took this lesson from the Bible and they said they put it in now. How does this apply to this world that we live in now, or how does this apply to your personal life experience? And so I like that. I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very true. Jan, I also know one of your big hobbies is the jazzercise.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew this.
I don't know if I call it a hobby, but
Jan, obsession, hobby,
it's a
you
lot.
call
Well,
it.
You don't move it, you lose it.
That's true.
So I started doing jazzercise when Lily was little, when she's in about first or second grade. Well, actually, my girlfriend got me to do it when my mom passed away.
Yeah.
And that was really good.
Yeah.
And so, and it just, I feel better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to have, for me, meditation, exercise, a faith community, and a good diet,
Yeah.
So I try to go 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And it's an hour session. But the women in that class, I've been going there for 20 some odd years now. And so everybody knows each other, and it's a wide cross section.
Yeah.
It's where all different walks of life come together.
Yep.
And so I have a lot of Jewish friends that are in that group. I used to sing in the opera chorus. I have a lot of opera friends that are in that group. And it's like all things intersect, there.
Yeah.
I have a friend from Wesley UMC that's in that, and she's a retired third grade teacher. And I sat with her when we did a joint service with Wesley a few years ago. And so it's really cool.
Yeah. My dad owned a veterinary clinic in Lincoln, Nebraska for quite a while, and there was we were in a kind of a strip mall, and across the parking lot from our clinic was a jazzercise studio. And I remember multiple times going there, usually in the evening to walk dogs, and I could just hear this woman screaming at the people in there, and 3, and just like scream. That's all I could hear across the parking lot, and I always thought, oh my, what are they doing in there?
So this is
why are they screaming at each other?
Ignorant question, probably, because I'm not super familiar with jazzercise. When y'all say jazzercise, what I'm imagining.
Would you like to show us?
No,
please.
I'm imagining like Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies.
No,
that's what I'm picturing.
No,
so not that.
No,
Okay.
Richard Simmons just did certain moves. Jazzercise is choreographed.
Okay.
And so you do things in an 8-beat pattern. It's like section A, section B.
Okay.
This is 8 beats, and this is a different 8 beats. And we do it to, like I was listening to Rihanna at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Several of her songs that she sang, we do routines to in jazzercise.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of
you
booty busting in there.
I remember as a kid, I don't know, I had to have been young, 8, maybe 7 or 8, and we had a pretty big extended family, and my house had a big living room, and stairs went up, and you could kind of go out and peek out over the stairs and see down into the living room, and my mom and her sisters and nieces and stuff would come over and do Richard Simmons sweating to the oldies, and I thought it was the funniest thing. So I would sneak out after bed, and I would come and I'd just peek out and watch them.
I'm sure it was entertaining.
Do sweating to the oldies.
That is hilarious.
So,
I love that. Yeah. Jan, I know singing and choir is one of your other great loves. How did you get started in that?
Well, I was a music major at UT.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's degree in music and specializing in music education. And I taught 6 years in the public schools. When I was in Houston, I taught elementary music, and I also, in another school district, I taught private voice lessons to high school students.
Okay.
And did that for a long time. And so I've always been in a choir, and I've grown up going to UIL competitions and all of that stuff. And then when I was a music teacher, I went to, there's a annual conference in San Antonio called Texas Music Educators Association that everybody goes to, and did that. And then when I came here, when Jim and I first moved here from Houston, one of my choral professors was the chorus master for Austin Lyric Opera. And so I auditioned with him and got in the chorus there. And I did that for 17 years, for a long run.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. And then I joined this church, and I started singing in the choir here and doing the opera.
Yeah.
And there were several people at that time that sang in the UUMC choir that also sang in the opera chorus. And we have a huge group of people that are opera enthusiasts here at UUMC. Some even usher.
Yeah.
And so every time we go, we have season tickets, and Lily and I go to the opera. And every time we go, we always see, UUMC peeps there.
Yeah.
So
I love that. That's very cool.
We don't have to talk about this if you are uncomfortable talking about it. We can cut it out if you want to talk about it and you don't want it to be on there. But I had a question about your mom dying, and you said you were 43 when she passed. And you said you kind of went through a phase there where you're kind of crisis a little bit. Did you find that experience, though, helped you define things that were important to you, and did that come quickly, or was that over time? And the reason I ask is because obviously, my dad passed in 2019, very young. He was 65. It was a month before his retirement, and I found that pretty quickly it kind of solidified some things in my life that I'm like, this is,
what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I can't remember all the stuff that was going on. I lost a lot of friends kind of boom, boom, boom in a row, and my mom. And so that was kind of, I just got overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But my mom, when she died, her passing was a good passing. And it was I had such a sense of the sacred in that hospital room.
Yeah.
And although it was hard to, that feeling when you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, my dad died.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my dad's not here anymore. That you go through that for quite a while.
Yeah.
And, but, I'd had a dream about her actually shortly after she died. I had this dream that I was walking in a museum going from picture to picture, and I got to this one picture, and it was like my mom in a mirror, and she's looking at me. And I went, Mom, are you okay? And she looked at me, and she smiled, and she just nodded her head like that. And that was my thing, that everything's okay, But it certainly does put things into perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about dreams, because that is one of the things that I've found. I don't dream very often, but I do find that I dream a lot about Dad.
Yeah.
And it's just us doing, working on the farm, or like fixing a light, or and it's just completely banal.
Yeah.
And I wake up feeling so. I think you hear people like that, it's upsetting to them, but I find it so peaceful, because it's almost like you get to spend a little bit of time with them, because it is banal. But what you said about the holy place,
the sacredness,
sacredness of we found that too. And Dad passed. He died of cancer, but he kind of fought it for 2 years, and then he worked a 50, 60-hour work week the week before he passed. Like he was fine, and then he wasn't. And there was something kind of, you say, a good passing, like we frequently refer to that, because there's not the long goodbye.
Yeah.
But it's not, something maybe super tragic that you don't see it coming, and you feel like you haven't. There were things left unsaid, and we definitely, in that hospital room, I remember, he was saying, when's Ashley? Because she was driving in. I drove up, and she was driving in. And it was almost like he was staging this picture around the bed of the people that he cared most about. And once we were there, he kind of just looked at us all. We had, about a 2-hour conversation with us all sitting in that position. And then he kind of
he let go
pretty quick after that. So, it is. It's, a very spiritual experience.
It certainly is.
way.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just my grandmother died about a year and a half ago, and I just had a dream about her like a week ago, and it was so vivid to me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just in her house, and her house was filled with all these like big plants, like supersized plants. And I was in her closet with her, and I was hanging up a jacket, and I was just like, I don't know how to do this without you.
Yeah.
And she just like hugged me. She's like, it's gonna be fine. And I was just like, oh my gosh, and
That was
that was the
that was
feeling.
your it's going to be fine
Yes.
dream.
Yes, I wish it would have come like a year ago, but it was there's something very helpful about that. And Chad knows I really love talking about grief because I feel like it's
Yeah.
this thing that hangs over every single person you'll ever meet. And the folks that talk about it and deal with it are usually a little better off. But
Yeah.
I think there's something really powerful about sharing that with other people, but also having time to reflect on what that grief has brought you and kind of where it's brought you to and those things that you hold dear to yourself. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I'll say this and then we can move on to maybe brighter topics, but we recently had a dad's night out and we were discussing this losing parents and stuff like that, and one of the things, and you said Lily was 5, Olivia, I don't know how old she would have been in 2019. I'm not going to do the math. 7. But also you know the story but Dad had planned a Disney trip, wanted to take the kids to Disney, and then died a week before. Like we buried him on a Wednesday or whatever day that was, but we were left for Disney 3 days later.
Yeah.
With my mom, because she and so there was some therapeutic. There's a therapeutic nature to that.
Yes.
Of removing, but then there's also the sad times, and I remember Olivia. She was staying in a room with my mom, and they were watching, Disney at the end of the day, and Mom was, that those are the quiet moments where you just kind of, lose it a little bit, and so she was having a moment in bed where she was crying, and Olivia was in this other bed watching the thing, and she just turned off the TV, got up, and went over and laid next to Mom. Didn't say anything. And I thought, how profound that this little 7-year-old could really
pick up on
She didn't
that.
understand, the gravity of it all. But she did in a way. And I think that is just
that's awesome.
Impressive what human beings are capable of.
Yeah.
Anyway, also you're really into hippos.
Oh yes.
Let's talk about that.
Changing subjects.
Let's talk about hippos.
Yes.
Any
particular hippo?
Yeah, where did the love for Fiona come from?
Well, I have my former voice teacher who actually used to sing in the choir here.
Yeah.
She teaches at Louisiana, University of Louisiana in Monroe now, Claire Evangelisti. And she had posted this story about Fiona, and Fiona was a baby hippo that was born premature. And when she was born, she weighed 20 some odd pounds, and hippos are supposed to weigh 50 to 100.
Yeah.
She was very premature. Yeah. And in normal situations, she would not have survived. Yeah. But this amazing team, this was at the Cincinnati Zoo, they figured, she wasn't even big enough that she could nurse on her mama, You have to be kind of tall, know. And so they figured out they milked the mama.
I don't know. I'm glad I didn't have to do that.
They just milked her initially and then sent the milk to this lab that can create that particular formula.
Okay.
So they were able to get the milk. And then, but she had a whole bunch of issues, and at one point she almost died.
Yeah.
And so they she was getting dehydrated, and they called the hospital, the NICU unit at the hospital in Cincinnati, and the NICU nurses and doctors came over with their little baby sonogram equipment and little baby, IVs, and they were able to find Fiona's vein and put an IV in her and start giving her some fluids. And they had a little oxygen nose clip on her, and that turned her around. And from that point on, it was really a miracle. And then people in the city of Cincinnati just rallied around this. And then the Cincinnati Zoo director said, he told this story. He said, right after Fiona kind of survived and was starting to thrive, he said, I was going on this trip to some inner jungle of Africa somewhere. He goes, it's not a place you drive your car to. There's no airplane or buses or anything. You have to get on a boat and hike in and take a jeep through a jungle and get on another boat. And it's very complicated to get to this spot. He said, I had on my Cincinnati Zoo shirt and my hat on, and he said, I walked into this community, and the first guy came up to me and goes, oh, how's Fiona doing? And he's going, what?
That's cool.
And he goes, here I'm in this very remote place in Africa, and they knew about Fiona. So I just fell in love with her, and I've been following her ever since.
Yeah,
so
very cute.
There's something also very tender about having to take care of something that small. And obviously parents who are taking care of babies, there's like that instant connection. But with animals too, I remember at the farm we had a calf that I got to name. I named it Red, and its mother passed, and we had to milk another cow that had a calf that hadn't been weaned, and I would go out and feed this calf, and forever, when it was time to sell off cows, not that one. That one is mine.
Yep.
And it's it's a connection that you have.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Very true.
Anyway, it's kind of all over the place here.
It's all over
It's
the
okay.
place.
But,
you knew it would be.
Yeah.
Normal day.
Um,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I was going to ask about working here at the
Yes,
church.
of course.
Yeah. So
The good stuff.
when were you? Yeah, I want you to give us all the tea. When did you start working here at the church?
I was, because I adopted my daughter and we started late in life, I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. And so when she got ready to go to college, I started substitute teaching at the elementary school across the street. And then somebody from the church said, what do you think about working in the office, just part-time? And I said, yeah, I could do that. And so I started working here and, was doing kind of helping in the office and doing database stuff and kind of tracking the membership and tracking attendance and that kind of thing, and kind of helping with communion, helping line up lectors to read the scripture readings in the worship service.
All the nuts and bolts.
All that stuff, And somebody said, so what's your first impression now that you've been working in the church office? Because the church office is very different from what you experience on Sunday morning.
Yes.
And I said, it's kind of a cross between the Vicar of Dibley and Faulty Towers.
You are not wrong.
I know, am I?
No, you're
No.
not wrong at all.
It was as my grandmother used to say, it was a hoop hoop and a rah rah, It was always something going on.
Yep.
And
It's usually something weird.
it always
We're
weird.
Like building a robot. Or,
Yeah, always
weird.
what you would not expect.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and being on staff, our staff has always been awesome. And I started when Carl Roths was here.
Yeah.
And Darlene Bowes was the associate pastor. Oh, and I knew Rosie Johnson too. But we've gone through.
It's changed a lot.
We're 3 pastors down the road, and we had a huge turnover
Right before
when
I
you
started.
guys
Yeah,
came on board.
Yep.
So it's always been pretty good, and it's interesting to work with people with different personalities, different numbers on the Enneagram.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I've always enjoyed it, and I like it was like behind the scenes of what how all the different activities at the church are pulled together.
Yep,
absolutely.
So
and worship is a production.
It is.
It's kind of a theatrical production.
It is. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Yeah. Chad, is it time for your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is. All the fun things. We ask everybody, what are you watching, streaming?
What are you reading?
Reading. You were a Ted Lasso fan, right?
Mm-mm.
You never watched Ted Lasso?
No, I need to do
I'm
that.
just going to cut that out.
Okay.
Just a reminder to cut that out. So yeah, what are you watching, streaming, listening to? Anything fun?
I watch Korean dramas. It's
Jan?
my daughter Lily's fault.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she got me hooked on it. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Pastor Earl and
Yeah.
Jihei also watch
Uh-huh.
Korean. And
Sure.
I've learned how to say awesome in Korean.
Great.
Daebak.
Daebak.
Yeah, so when you
Okay.
see Earl, say, Earl, you're just Daebak.
Ah, I'm gonna do
got
it now.
Well,
That's awesome.
Korean
So-
dramas. Where do you watch Korean dramas?
there are a bunch on Netflix.
Netflix. Okay.
There used to not be. There used to be a thing called Drama Fever,
Okay.
and they had and then they went under, and I think there's a huge market
There
for
is.
Asian.
Yeah.
And if you notice on Netflix now, there's a whole bunch of Indian and Latino and all kinds,
Yeah.
but huge Korean
Okay.
line of shows. So I got interested because it was just fascinating to get a peek in that culture
Yeah.
and to pick up on the things that they do and the way their attitudes about things, and they have a honorifics incorporated in their language, so they have formal talk to people that are older, kind of like the French, that tutoie, so they have a formal way of talking, and they will ask you, how old are you? Because they want to know right off the bat, are you older than me or am I older than you?
Okay.
And even if you're just 1 year older, they will talk formally to you unless you say, you can drop that.
Yeah. Jan, have you read any good books lately?
Mostly what I've been reading are
Korean dramas.
no, not K-dramas. Mostly I have such a huge thing of books to read that are contemplative.
Yeah.
So one group is reading a Pema Chodron book.
Oh yeah.
On living life beautifully or something like that. I never can remember the titles.
Yeah.
And then we read a cool book by Stephen Charleston, who is a bishop in the Episcopal Church, and he's also a chief in the Lakota tribe.
Oh, cool.
And he is really awesome. He has a amazing voice. And we read a book called The Ladder to Light.
Okay.
And each chapter is about a rung in the ladder.
Oh,
And each rung is a different thing,
Yeah.
And he kind of talks about, weaves in Native American spirituality with Christian spirituality.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful book.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it.
What's the name of it again?
It's called The Ladder. I think it's Ladder to Light. Ladder to the Light.
Ladder to the Light.
Yeah. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Did you watch Outlander? Did you watch
Yeah,
Outlander?
I did watch Outlander.
I knew there was something.
I watched Outlander.
Because you then went to Scotland.
And
Yeah.
and that's a big thing in Scotland. That you could take a tour of all the Outlander places. And you can take a tour of all the Harry Potter places.
Yeah.
Of course.
So which we didn't do the Outlander, but we did hit the Harry Potter store. And we went to where J.K. Rowling's, there was a place called the Elephant Room. And it's a little cafe, and that's where she used to go write Harry Potter books. She would sit in that cafe and start writing. And across the street from the cafe is St. Giles Church, and there's a cemetery attached to the church. Like it's old. And she would walk through the cemetery, and that's where she got some of the names for the characters.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so we did that.
I love that.
And we went to my spiritual trip to Scotland. That's one of the main reasons I wanted to go was I wanted to go to the community of Iona.
Yes.
And Iona is a little island in the West Hebrides Islands that are on the west side of the coast. And an Irish monk named Columba was exiled from Ireland because he didn't do something they wanted him to do. I don't know exactly what, but I think it had to do with hair, his hairstyle. Yeah. Some monks shaved their heads on the top like a bald pate, and others had a little ponytail thing in the back. And he didn't do what the Roman Catholic Church wanted him to do. So he and 12 or 13 monks got in a boat, and they went from Ireland across the ocean to Iona and started a monastery there. And this was like in the, I'm thinking 800s, really early.
It's the cradle of Celtic Christianity.
Yeah.
In Iona.
Yeah.
It has a beautiful abbey and the chapel, or I guess
Yeah, they
nuns.
rebuilt the monastery.
It's super beautiful and all stone, and the island is just gorgeous. I mean, there's not a lot. There's more sheep on the island than there's people,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful place to walk, and I was there for a week when I was in seminary. And if you want to talk about contemplative places where there's a thin space,
that's the
between you and
thin
God,
place.
like, that is
Absolutely.
a beautiful, beautiful place. And
Yeah.
it takes a long time. You have to take a train and
Yeah.
a boat.
It's like
and a
the guy
bus.
going to Africa.
Yeah,
You
so
have
it takes a long time
you don't.
to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
'Cause it's
Train,
so
bus,
beautiful.
ferry, another ferry.
We took a boat to Finkel's Cave while we were there, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of neat stuff to see there.
Dr. Long, Leon Long.
Yeah.
I call him Dr. Long because I took geology from him at UT.
Yeah.
We had a discussion about Finkel's Caves.
Yeah, it's very,
he knows
very
all
cool.
about that.
Yeah. But it's such a beautiful place, and such an interesting place to contemplate and to think deeply about God and nature, and it's a very small island. There's not,
it's
just
tiny.
a few shops and restaurants and stuff, and but it's very, very beautiful and a really neat place to be. So I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
I am considering taking a solo spiritual trip to Scotland. To the Lagavulin Scotch Distillery.
Of course.
Potentially in the winter.
You're going to reach total oneness with Scotch.
Exactly. Well, there's three of them that are all, and it's similar. They're real hard to get to. You have to want to go to those.
Yes.
But Lagavulin, Ardbeg, and Lefroy are all right there.
Yeah.
Well, there's a place called Roby's Tours, named after Robert Burns, and ROBY. They are awesome.
Yeah.
And that's what we took. We did. We went to Glasgow and caught their van, and then they drove the van, and then they did everything. They arranged places for us to stay, the ferry, all that stuff, and they probably do something like that. They probably do a Scotch tour too.
There's several of them.
Yeah, but they're really awesome. They were really nice and fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Jan, thank you so much for joining us.
Taking a lot of your time.
Good to
do
the welcoming prayer together and to hear about kind of how you ended up here and the work that you have continued to do. And congratulations on your new grandbaby. That's very exciting.
Thank you so much.
It's so good to, Chad and I have enjoyed so much meeting, talking to people we don't know super well, but also getting to know people that we do know well even better. And have really, this has been a really fun process for us.
For sure. So when that baby's old enough, you had to bring the baby up here.
Well, yeah.
Obviously.
We're waiting for that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Appreciate it. Chad, what are you going to do the rest of the week?
You asked that question a lot.
I do. And you never know.
Well, here's the problem. We've recorded, and it's just the same answers.
Yeah,
so I've tried
which
to
is
think
nothing.
Of something.
You're doing nothing this week.
Nothing.
You're just sitting around.
We got the service to put together, connection, all the communications thing. I'm trying to think of. I'm finally getting around to running electricity to my wood shop.
Oh, that's exciting.
I think you have a soccer game in the future.
I do have a soccer game in the future. That's next
very
week.
Exciting.
I'm dreading it a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to muster excitement because he's excited.
Yeah.
I am not
a sports fan.
I'm not. Well, I'm not going to be a sports dad. Like it's just
what
not,
I am shocked.
I don't know how. I'm gonna have to find that in me somewhere. But maybe I won't. Maybe he will be uninterested in it. We'll see. But yeah, so I'm gonna be under the house. Maybe I'll FaceTime you again under the house.
Great.
But
one time I called Chad and he was under the house trying to fix some pipes or something, and I was like, Chad, where in the world are you? Look, you've been buried alive. It was very funny.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
So yeah, what about you? What do you do?
Yeah, just Lent is approaching.
Yeah.
There are lots of things to do in Lent, and so I am just prepping for that. We're gonna have some dinners on Sunday night that I'm gonna cook, that I'm getting ready for, and just all the things. Ash Wednesday and Trove Tuesday, all the things. There's lots to go.
When is Melinda going to be in town?
My mother, Melinda, is coming at the end of the month, and I'm super excited because I have lots of things for her to do.
Awesome.
She helps me get things done in ways you wouldn't even believe. So
well, maybe Melinda can pop by.
she needs to. She needs to come see the pub. Yes, she would love that.
All right.
Well, thanks, Chad. Thanks, Jan.
You're welcome.
What a fun time at the PEEPS of UUMC. Thanks for joining us, friends. See you next time. Am I awkward every time? Yeah,
every
I think
time.
I am. Yeah. Every time I'm awkward.
On a very special episode.
Keep dancing with the devil, but it is a